Hey everyone, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. I'm Justin, and we're just a couple of peas in a pod.
I'm Nico, and I'm a commie clone.
Aw.
And I'm Dan, one member of this podcast.
Ho ho ho!
Oh,
And those
wow.
who know will know. Those who know
Wow.
will know. Because today we're going to review Invasion of the Body
Motherfucker,
Snatchers.
those who know, this is a podcast.
Those who know.
Why would they not know what that means?
So you knew. You
Only
knew.
select few.
You
Oh
knew.
my god. You were setting the bar so low for everyone. Please go on.
Well, you know, we invented the limo after all. But anyways, today we're going to be reviewing Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That's right, the 1956 cut. Let's go ahead and get it started. So this was directed by Don Siegel, starring Kevin McCarthy as Dr. Miles Bennell, Dana Winter as Becky Driscoll, King Donovan as Jack, Carolyn Jones as Teddy, and then some alien pods. So we open with Dr. Miles Bennell, a doctor who is actually currently in like a psychiatric ward or psych institution. He's raving to the doctors and anyone who will listen that everyone's in danger, but no one believes him. Finally, one doctor says that he will listen, and Miles begins to recount his story. And quick aside here, it's kind of like noirish. You know, it tells like a quick story. I was down for this beginning piece. So Miles had apparently just returned from a doctor's conference to his residence in Santa Mira, a small town in California. His nurse tells him that he had a lot of patients come to see him, but when he talks to them, apparently their issues have all been alleviated and they're just fine. Okay, sure. Also, important, his old flame, Becky Driscoll, is back in town, and the two reunite. As it turns out, there are actually people in town who believe that their relatives are imposters. Becky's cousin's one of these people, and she's convinced that her uncle's been replaced by an imposter. You see, the imposter has all of her uncle's memories, but something about him seems off. He just doesn't have that love in his eyes. Miles and Becky then head out to dinner where they meet a psychologist who implies that the town is suffering from some kind of mass hysteria, and that's the root of all these issues. Well, maybe, but Nico, what are your thoughts on that?
So, it turns out that that's just wrong.
Ah.
And Miles and Becky get a call from their friend Jack and his wife Teddy. The pair of them have a humanoid body that appears to be taking the form of Jack, strangely enough. Everyone leaves the house and calls the police, but when they get there, the body's gone. Hate to see it, folks. Happens to the best of us. But Teddy and Jack crash at Miles' place, and Becky goes home. Miles gets a bad feeling, though, and he goes to see her just on his gut. He breaks in through the basement and finds a body taking the form of Becky at this point, too. He runs upstairs and finds her in an unbreakable trance and then takes her to his house. At this point, Jack and Miles head to Becky's house, but the body's once again gone.
Damn.
Miles calls the local psychologist to scene, who then tells Miles that he must be suffering from the mass hysteria too. At which point, the next day, the four of them, they have a good old cookout.
Yeah.
But they find some pods containing human bodies in Miles' greenhouse. Because he's the type of motherfucker who has a greenhouse, I guess. And after some deductive reasoning, they realize that the bodies in the pods take over the minds of the people as they sleep and replace them. They call for help, but imposters have taken over the phone line. They didn't have 5G yet, you understand.
True enough.
Jack and Teddy then go for help, and Miles, he stays back with Becky so they can make sure the imposters don't suspect anything.
True enough.
Don't know that they suspect anything, rather.
Well, Dan, I'm sure this ends well. Hopefully. Why don't you go ahead and take us in?
Sort of, I guess. But it turns out that the whole town is compromised, and Miles can't wait for help. He and Becky sneak into town, but they are caught and hide in his office. They don't sleep, so they don't get taken over, and they witness the town getting ready to transport the pods to other towns. Miles and Becky attempt to make it to the highway to get help, but they are found out and pursued by the townsfolk. Suffering from extreme exhaustion, Becky falls asleep and is taken over by the invaders. Miles makes a last-ditch break for the highway and succeeds, but everyone thinks he's insane, and he winds up in the hospital. Now, we kind of skip back to quote-unquote present day, and having recounted his fantastic story, the doctors in the psych ward look on him with concern. Just as they are about to commit Miles, an injured man comes in. When one of the doctors inquires as to what happens, another doctor indicates that the man was struck by a truck and that they had to dig him out of a pile of gigantic pods.
What?
The doctors then start to believe Miles and call the national government for help. The end.
Nice. U.S. government for the win. For once. And maybe the only time ever in a horror movie.
We don't know that yet.
True. Well, let's go ahead and break this one down, shall we? So, Dan, I want to lead with you. Top of the morning to you, Dan. So,
okay, top of the morning.
How does this movie, Dan? I want to get a piece of your.
No.
Dan, how does this movie look?
It's pie.
Cherry pie.
Dan, how's the movie look, Dan?
I think this movie actually looks pretty good. There's not a lot of places that special effect needs to happen,
right?
Except for there's really just one scene that I can think of in the greenhouse, and we see the kind of pods in there. The bodies are like coming out of the pods a little bit, or the pods are revealing the bodies. And I thought that actually looked pretty cool, to be honest. They were like covered in like this foam kind of thing, coming creeping out of the pods. That part was pretty cool. Other than that, there were a couple cool camera angles, especially near the end when Miles was running around frantic. We got a couple cool shots that made, like close-up shots on his face that made it seem even more frantic. I thought there was some cool stuff going on.
Agreed. One point that I definitely wanted to follow up on in regards to what you were talking about is there's a part at the very end where Miles is talking to the people on the highway, and the camera angle, it takes a really, I don't know what it's called, the perspective it takes is kind of
Dutch
unhinged.
Angle?
Alfred Hitchcock uses that same angle all the time. So
It's probably a Dutch angle.
Maybe it is. Maybe I'm just mistaken. But that was one thing I noticed while I wasn't falling in love with Dana Winter. Aside from that, I think generally speaking, you're right. There wasn't a lot of need for special effects. And there was one part that was kind of funny a little bit. So the scene where you have Jack and Teddy at their place and there's the body there. And now granted, they had very limited special effects to work with. So the body was actually way better formed than they were making it out to be. They were like, I can barely see its face. It's like it hadn't finished the face yet. And I was like, no, totally it has.
It's right there. Yeah.
It's right there. And my favorite part is like, it's some monstrosity. Jack, it looks like you. And I'm just like, bruh.
They're being real fucking poetic about like, nah, that's just dude's face.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of messed up. But those were my big takeaways. All in all, though, I watched the black and white. Did either of you guys watch the colorized version?
I didn't know there was a colorized version.
Apparently there is out there, but I watched the black and white version and I liked it. Nico, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think the black and white actually helped the overall vibe and appeal of the sort of not really monsters, but like the stuff that's like special effects. Like we were saying, the scenes where we see some of the townsfolk in these pods that's covered with what looks to be just some kind of foam. I don't know.
Right.
And like that probably would have looked very, very, very silly if it was in a higher definition and had more, clarity to it. But because it looked a little bit more, I guess, old-timey and noir, because it's, monochromatic and just the whole vibe it had along with that, I think it definitely helped the film's aesthetic for sure overall.
All right. Fair enough. And I guess next up is the sound. And for me, I feel like this movie sounds like its time period.
Very much so, yes.
For me, it's always a matter of like, I love the way the cars sound from this kind of time period. The way when they stop, you can kind of hear them roll over the gravel. It's such an odd thing to notice, but I like that sound. It lets me know I'm watching an older movie. The way they did the sound design and the effects are obviously different to the way we do them nowadays.
Would you call those sirens klaxons?
Oh, the ones that were playing in the town when they caught them and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they are kind of klaxonish, aren't they?
Yeah.
But those are my major takeaways from the sound. Dan, where do you fall?
I'm with you in agreement there. I like the score, very kind of like Justin said about the sound effects, very of the time, orchestral, like old-timey movies, but very well done too. I believe the composer was Carmen Dragon, which is badass.
Yes.
It did a fantastic job. I just think it really suited the movie quite well. And yeah, I thought it sounded great overall.
Nico, why don't you go ahead and slide in here and let us know your thoughts?
I want to echo a lot of the same. I thought that the score was really, really bombastic and
Yeah.
dramatic, and it had a lot of charm. And as sort of just like an artifact of its time, it's an interesting thing to watch and see because not a lot of movies have that nowadays.
Hmm, True enough. True enough. So I want to get started here and I want to talk about the pod people. So, first off, it's explained in the movie that they come from outer space. You know, the pod lands and it can replicate and mimic life. And what it does is when someone's asleep, it kind of takes their form, it drains their minds, essentially, their memories, their thoughts, everything else like that. But there's one exception here, and they're unfeeling. That is the only thing that really separates them from humans after they've kind of assimilated somebody, is they lack feeling. Now, we'll get to that particular point later, but I want to go ahead and reverse back here. Dan, there was a little bit of a discrepancy in this movie, I think, where we're talking about how the pods assimilate people. Because at the beginning, when the pod's assimilating Becky, you know, she's like currently being downloaded, I guess, when Miles finds her, and he kind of snaps her out of it and takes her away, and it works. But later on, she falls asleep and instantly is converted to one of them. More importantly, there's no body double that is there. It's her body is seemingly taken over, which is kind of odd and different. How'd you feel about that?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I watched it, I noticed that and I was like, wait a second. I thought these pods are supposed to be growing people and there's supposed to be a double of them.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I wasn't that bothered by it. Like I recognized the plot hole, but I just feel like this is a well-written movie and it's such a simple concept. And because the writing is so good, to me, it was like, okay, that there's a plot hole. Like I still enjoyed the movie without it. I feel like sometimes if there's a movie that has sort of like a weaker plot that relies on a lot of twists and relies on of tricks and stuff, and then you find a plot
Right.
hole, then it's like, oh shit, well that just blows apart the whole movie. To me, that didn't happen on this. And I saw the plot hole, but I was like, that's discrepancy, but whatever. I still enjoy it. It's still fine.
All right, that's fair. And Nico, I want to ask you, how'd you feel about the assimilation process? Did you think there is maybe a little bit of horror in that as we kind of shift gears here? You know, like something draining your mind as you sleep. Do you find that horrific?
Man, there are some days where I wish I could drain my mind and then go to sleep. So, like, honestly, that sounds pretty nice if I'm real. But in terms of how a regular person would take that, I guess, yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with sort of how we view like the idea of the other, which is something
Mm,
that horror movies deal with inherently and intrinsically just in their nature, given that they're being described as these characters who are like, they're all the same. There's no individuality about them. They don't feel anything. They're a bunch of nobodies, Riku. And
Wow. You're right though.
like literally it's just Kingdom Hearts, but in the 50s. It's fine.
Well, Dan, again, touching on that again, they are heartless. And I do want to
Hey.
know, this movie has, I mean, let's face it, endless, endless, endless allegories to the time. You know, we've got kind of the rise of communism, McCarthyism, and that's, again, Nico, real quick to interject here. You had mentioned something pre-pod. The author of the original work from which this movie was spawned, did he intend for it to be taken as an allegory for communism and that kind of stuff?
Right. So author Jack Finney has mentioned as much that even though he is able to, recognize that there are certainly people who do view it this way, given the symbolism and the sort of pop culture themes that were going on at the time, it's not a work that was intended to be necessarily inherently political. It was just a sort of run of the mill kind of thriller type deal. And that brings up an interesting point that everybody wants to hear people on a podcast talk about. Is art ever not political?
I think that it's very easy at times to throw out authorial intent and kind of rock with what you feel in your heart.
Hmm.
Especially if you didn't know, because I didn't know about that original intent. I thought this was always very blatantly and obvious to me that this was, taken into the time period. This was clearly a commentary on these things.
Yeah.
So I do think that sometimes even if art is not intended to be political, it can still turn out that way if people interpret it that way.
For sure. Yeah. There's a whole note about death of the author in there too, which is a whole other topic for another time. But yeah, no, I'm with you.
True enough. Now, Dan, given that we've kind of like deathed the author here a little bit, why don't we go ahead and, another thing this kind of corresponds to a little bit is groupthink. And people who are, just kind of like, for lack of a better word, they're sheep. They really are. They kind of just do what they know to do. No one ever breaks free. There's never any individuality. There's never anything like that. Is that maybe scary? Do you think that's worthy of being horror? I mean, is this... I'm struggling here to determine what about this movie really makes it horror. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like that's a really deep question. You asked like 3 questions in one there.
All right. Take your time.
So I mean, with the whole like groupthink kind of thing, I think that's always a question that kind of comes up in, I'd say probably everyone's life, at least at some point.
Yeah.
And while I don't think it's necessarily horrific, I do think that it's intrinsically a little bit scary, maybe, of just kind of becoming like everybody else. And, oftentimes, when we're in school, we have big dreams of what we want to do growing up. But then a lot of people kind of end up in just, a regular job, which there's nothing wrong with. But, you kind of see
job's a job.
maybe you're yeah, exactly.
All right. Don't fucking at me, bro.
But I was just saying, sometimes people look back and like, oh man, that's scary. Or maybe when you're younger, you think, oh man, my biggest fear is that I end up just doing regular stuff, which again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with. But I think sort of intrinsically, we all think of ourselves as unique, and we are, but kind of becoming just a standard cookie cutter person is kind of scary when you really, really think about it.
Well, I think Nico touched on it a little bit. So, Nico, I want to kind of reverse back to you here in a second. You mentioned the other, and I think maybe what makes this group thing kind of scary is this is, and I can say this because I'm on my Sigma male grind set, and I can see you for the sheeple you all are, but
certainly
there is a certain amount of groupthink that exists in society anyways. A certain amount of groupthink is actually kind of healthy. But I think that the reason why this may be more scary is because it's an outside groupthink, for lack of a better word. Like, these imposters are alien, A, in the sense that they come from the sky, but B, in the sense that their lack of individuality is so un-American, it's scary, Nico. So what do you feel about that? And is that has to be, whether it's intentional or not, I mean, it has to be a plot point that we can easily derive from this, right?
Yeah, well, Uno reverse, motherfucker. What does it mean to be American? Tell me that.
I mean, when this was written, it was I think it was a different meaning altogether than what it means now. I think, in particular, these people had, because this movie came out in 56, and I think the actual story was written not that much earlier than that.
I think it was written in 53, if I'm right.
I mean, the literal ghost of World War II was still haunting everyone. I mean, these people had literally fought in large part to protect the American way of life.
The Korean War was still fresh as hell, too.
Yes. Yeah, the Korean War was pretty fresh. It definitely was pretty fresh there. So there was that added fear of, again, communism and kind of like an outside force working its way into America, which, again, I don't see how this couldn't possibly be McCarthyism, but I digress.
No, you're absolutely right. This is like 100% leading into a lot of the sort of essentialist narratives that were being spread by propaganda at the time. Like people in Russia are communists. They don't have any individuality. They don't, like nothing of theirs is, like they're all sheep, et cetera, et cetera. Like it totally matches with the sort of political ideologies at the time. So like, it's hard to not have that reading, I feel.
It's also interesting because, like, just so much about history repeats itself, because I feel like we're experiencing the same thing now,
Yeah.
And maybe, I mean, it shifted a little bit, the political
Yeah,
ideologies
groupthink got dumber.
right. Like both sides of the aisle say the same shit about the other side, like groupthink
The
and
Yeah.
sheeple and whatever. Like it's, everyone still says that and, it's just repeating itself. So I thought a lot of those ideologies and themes and things that the movie talked about were still very relevant
Yeah.
today.
I think maybe one of the
Gosh,
most
guys, we
American
sure do live in a
values-
society.
Oh, man.
Well, it was funny because again, Sigma Wolf here, but I
Right.
feel like one
Run
thing
to
that
the
is
litter,
perhaps
represent.
very American is to be an individual and value your individual ideologies, but also feel like your individual ideologies are under attack. So
Yeah, real
feel
fucking
like-
talk.
because I feel like, I'm sure there are people who, like you might have some folks out there who are, staunch hardline conservatives who feel like whenever they walk into a liberal town, they place themselves into the role of the hero of this story. And
Everyone's the hero of their own story.
Exactly. And they're surrounded,
Yeah.
but you're the hero of my story.
Oh,
But they're surrounded by sheeple and everything else like that. And I feel like this is one of those where it's very easy to self-insert because everyone's felt, I guess, outcast or outside and seen, like people acting in a certain way. And you're
this
just
is
like,
my
"Bro."
Body Snatchers OC, guys.
But yeah, I mean, that's it. Deep, cognizant points all around, everybody. Round of applause. That was a clap. So,
Oh, ew.
Our hands were very moist. Don't worry about it.
Nope. So, one thing I wanted to touch on real quick here as well. There is really not a lick of violence in this movie. None.
I mean, they
And-
stab a dude in a pod, but it's kind of like pillows hitting each other as the sound effects.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you stab an inanimate object, is that violence?
Oh, I regularly commit violence against my phone, and I
Okay,
apologize as I
yeah.
drop it on the ground like 4 times a day.
Fair. But, okay. I guess maybe aside from that, there's not really a lot of... Oh, and they do kind of like, I guess, ambush and stab the guys with some vials to knock them out.
Oh,
Yeah.
forgot
I guess
about
that is...
yeah.
Okay, this movie's rather light on violence. And it's like, it's got pods and pod people, but... And we've discussed what is and makes this movie horror. Do you think that this movie fits better into sci-fi than horror?
Hmm.
Yeah. Honestly, I think
Not saying it can't be both, but I'm saying if you were forced, pod to the head to pick one, would you choose sci-fi over horror?
I think I would choose science fiction now. I think I would choose horror if I was in 56.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would do horror because I don't think that violence and death and destruction preclude horror, or I don't think you need those in order to be horror.
Certainly not. It's just very common in horror.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very true. Very true. Very true. But as we can tell from the one time we were in Dan's house and we thought we heard a ghost, it doesn't need to be any violence to be scared. So
It's true.
we can all
True.
take that with a grain of salt. Future bonus episode. Now, I want really quickly here before we jump into the what would you do? Do you think that this could happen today? I'm saying, do you think that if pods rained down from the sky or whatever else like that started to replicate and take over folks, could they be successful? Could they take over smaller towns? Could they expand into bigger ones?
Yeah, I think so.
You think so?
Yeah.
Bro, I don't
I think
know
so.
how people would realistically be imitated that quickly, though. Like, sure, you're an alien, but are you going to learn the nuances of, like, fucking TikTok in, like, a day?
Apparently they know everything the host knew, literally
Mhm.
down to everything. The only thing they lack is emotion.
Okay. Maybe that, I don't know, speeds up the download process to get it from their brains from the cloud or some shit. I don't know.
Well, I mean, they got Bluetooth, so they be able to get it faster now.
Oh, true. Certainly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking A. Yeah, I don't know, man. I guess I can see something like that happening today then, yeah.
For me, it's definitely an agree. I think this could happen today because I feel like once you start in like the smaller towns and then you just begin working your way inwards, like people might see these pods, but like no one's going to really know what's going on. And I just feel like, I don't know, they'd have to like, in the beginning, they were kind of like stealthily hiding the pods in like people's basements and stuff like that and taking them over that way. I think that's a pretty significant moves.
Yeah.
Like, I like that maneuver. So if they did it like that, there's like no doubts. Now, granted, there would be people that would be harder to get to, but it could still be done. Depending on the range of the pods, I think, is a massive factor. But, you know, if they're within Wi-Fi range, I guess they could potentially do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now it's time for the what would you do? And this is probably one of the more fun ones, in my opinion. So let's say the three of us are living in a small town in the middle of nowhere. Let's put us at our current ages because the doctor was 10 years older than us, or actually more than that. But regardless, we're all there. We are ourselves. And one day, you know, like we see some people talking about how their relatives are maybe not, you know, who they say they are. TLDR, we go to a cookout and it turns out that, oh snap, it's pod people. So we're at that point in the movie, right? So I want to ask you.
No, it's okay. We're podcasters. We can do this.
What would you do? What would you do once you found that out? Would you just run and say it's not my problem? Would you try and fight back? Would you try and alert the government? I mean, what would you do?
I think at that point, if like the whole town are pod people and I know that,
yeah,
I would leave.
Right.
Like, what am I going to do against an entire town?
Fair.
Like, if it was like a couple people, then I feel like I would try to do something. But, man, I would just move to like South America.
It depends on how far along they are.
Right. Would you maybe, Nico, try and alert anybody about it? Take a picture, post that shit on fucking Instagram?
Oh, like, I would absolutely like go to town on some fucking pods if I saw them and maybe like murk one or two motherfuckers aside from that. But that's not something that I'm going to go on a, you know, Dante from Devil May Cry triple S stylish spree over here.
I mean, for me personally, I wonder how like the pods taste. Like, could you curry them down, you think?
Yo, I bet you could.
Like,
probably.
Is it vegan?
Could roast them. That's a good question. Is it vegan? Could aliens?
Are the pods different
Plant
from the
aliens?
people?
Are they meat?
Yeah, the pods are the containers in which they grow.
But they're not real people.
Okay, well, look, milk is vegetarian, but cow udder is considered meat, right? You can't, like, think about it like that.
Milk isn't vegetarian.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
It's not vegan.
Sorry, no,
It's not vegan.
it's not vegan.
It's still a dumb example, but I don't know. I mean,
real big people questions in here today. I'm done. Open that door.
I mean, it's true though.
If they can't feel, if they don't have feelings, then are they
Sentient?
Yeah, are they like?
I think they are. They
meat?
recognize themselves as life forms.
Yeah.
True.
And they've all got these wacky
I'm
anime haircuts and X's in their names, like Luxeus and Larxene and Axel.
Podax.
Yeah.
Milex. Dr.
But-
Milex. Zeki.
Just X10. Nixco.
Be like Justix.
Daxon.
No, Dan would be Zand.
Zant.
Anyhow, yo, nerding out over here, but back to it. No one's gonna know what the fuck we were talking about there. But regardless, how do we get so sidetracked? So I would personally like try and like fight. I would try and like go to a different town, but I would try and convince someone to like alert like the National Guard or something like that. Like, yo, these pods are fucking people up and they can't be allowed to like escape. So I definitely think I would also maybe try, and I'm surprised no one tried that, sleeping with like a tinfoil hat. Because I mean, if I've learned anything, like a tinfoil hat prevents like unwarranted and unwanted like waves.
Would you risk that though? Like, what if it didn't work? Are you willing to stake your entire life on a tinfoil hat?
I'm saying I would just have it with me, just in case.
Yeah.
You just have tinfoil on you like that?
Do you not?
I mean,
Keep it in my pocket.
no. Not like in a pocket. You know, like I got my phone and my trusty Reynolds wrap.
You don't have any.
Bro, you always got to carry a knife on you at all times, but you got to have your knife in tinfoil
You gotta have that aluminum.
so it doesn't get wet.
God.
Yeah, make sure that the 5G don't get to it.
And you can sharpen your knife with tinfoil too. But moving on past that.
Make sparks out with it too.
So what would be the tell for each of us? Like, how would you...
You start talking about knives and tinfoil. That's your fucking tell, you maniac.
Well, no, I'm talking about like the one, Becky's cousin, what was her name? Wilfred, Winnie, whatever her name was. She was convinced that her uncle, who had been like a father to her,
Uncle
whole life,
Ira, yeah,
was an alien or some shit like that, or an imposter, as she said, because he wasn't like, he didn't have the love in his eyes anymore. So what do you think would be something that you're normally very passionate about that would be the tell? But we'll talk about the other people. So Nika, what would be Dan's tell? Like, what would be our tell that Dan is like maybe not Dan anymore?
I don't know, but as you said that, I just realized in that moment, Uncle Ira's sole interaction with the other people was like, wow, you sure got a hot date, huh? Like saying that to fucking protagonist's son, and they were saying like, the love is gone from his eyes. Nah, he just wants to fuck someone else, bro. I'm sorry.
What? No. You had me until the end. What the fuck? No.
He's trying to
Jesus.
Look, he's
No.
trying to smash other people. It's fine.
No.
The love
Fucking
isn't
hell.
there for her.
This is when
It's
we would stop with the fucking technical problems, technical difficulties. What the hell? Bro, that was his niece.
Oh
His
shit,
niece
that was
cum
his
daughter.
niece?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
like,
no.
bro, like,
That's
Oh
why
no!
you just called him Uncle.
said
You
that-
literally just said Uncle Ira.
yeah, who you think Uncle Ira is?
I thought it was like a colloquialism, like, oh, that's
What?
everybody's
Pet name?
Uncle Dave.
What?
You know,
Is their kink calling you uncle?
not even a little.
Bro, they were more sophisticated. Fuck calling me daddy. No, man. Fuck out of here with all that bullshit, okay? Fuck out of here with all that bullshit. It's not what DOTD's about. Oh my God, Nico. You've gotten this pod banned in 6 countries
Yo,
and 4 U.S. territories.
Justin was just dying and he goes, what?
Put the echo on my voice. What? But anyways, back to this though. I think Nico's tell would likely be talking about like his guitars or like talking about like rock music in general, like metal. I feel like it'd be obvious if he was going through the motions with some of that stuff. It'd be like, bruh, something's not right here.
I would just be like, yo, Nico, I've been really getting into Nirvana lately. They're a really good band.
Aw.
And if you don't explode, then I'm like, oh, yo, something's wrong. Something's wrong.
I think probably for Dan, I don't even know. Nico, what's Dan's tell? How do you tell Dan doesn't feel emotion anymore? Because Dan's like, okay, Dan has feelings, right? But Dan's
I
not
have a
like
flat affect.
Dan is not like very expressive all the time. He's very stoic.
Yeah.
So how do you de-stoic him? How do you?
I mean, I've got a not fun answer, but
Oh, no.
How about we keep it fun?
Fuck me up, Nico.
yeah, I don't know, man.
I mean, I think maybe one of the only ways to really tell is tell.
I would ask him to think about the
Is-
ending scene from Train to Busan, where the kids are singing.
That's true. That
did almost cry there.
That is definitely true.
Yeah.
For me, it's the Man from Nowhere for Dan. I feel like
that one too.
Dan has an
Still haven't
intense
seen that.
emotional connection with that joint. What?
Yeah, man, haven't seen it.
What?
You never seen The Man from Nowhere?
Nope. Nowhere,
What?
no how.
Bruh. Movie's a classico, bro. Anyways, yes. And for me, what's my tell? How do you tell Justin is Justin or no? What's something I get really passionate about?
Similar to Nico, I would start talking to you about hip hop and I'd just be like, yo, you know how like rappers and whatever also like usually have a very cultural significance or like to their, hometown or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, isn't Nicki Minaj like Trini?
Oh,
Right?
that'd be it, bro. True enough. True enough. True enough. But now let's go ahead and talk about the critic review, shall we? Where do you guys think this one rates on Rotten Tomatoes? Did my voice crack?
No.
Also, Rotten Tomatoes.
Pretty high, I think.
Hit me with it. Hit me with it, fellas.
Hit me with your best shot. 98.
Is that what you think?
I spoiled myself. I'm sorry.
You ho! I fucking knew it. Dan, what do you think? Erase? Blah, 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 blah. Erase what you heard.
I was going to say 92.
Oh, I think 98. I read it on the page. But no. So it's got a 98% from, fuck you, Nico. It's got a 98% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes. We got an 85% from the audience. You a hoe. You a hoe. Okay? You a hoe and a reverse hoe. You a ho-oh, bro. But anyways.
I'm a legendary bird.
So
How?
I want to know your general thoughts. What's your rating of the movie? So why don't we go ahead and I'll lead. I don't lead often enough in these things.
No, you don't.
Do it.
So I'm largely in agreement with the audience. I would put it slightly higher, but I would stick this farewell at an 89. I think this is something that I really like the movie. I liked a lot of the writing. I like the setting. I like the characters. I think this movie really benefits from being able to watch it in any point in time with any kind of reference. And you can apply this to anything. Like you can apply this to literally anything, like whether or not you want to apply this to a certain like cult-like political party, or whether or not you want to like apply this to, literally anything. You can do that. And that's great. That's great writing. So I really like it. And that's an 89 from me. Who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
I am pretty much on the same page as you, Justin. I really enjoyed this movie. I also think that it's very relevant, again, like I mentioned before, and can, like you said, can be applied in like any circumstance or any perspective, I guess. I didn't like it quite as much as the critics did, but I'm going to do a 92.
Nico, why don't you go ahead and save the day?
All right. Well, I'm not going to do that, but I did really enjoy this movie. I think that there is a lot that you can get out of this movie, particularly upon multiple watches or something. Like I feel like this is something that would hold up very well looking at it through different sort of lenses and stuff. And that leads to fun discussion. And that's what we're all about here. So I'm going to give this one an 80.
Whoa.
Okay.
Lower than I thought you would.
Yeah.
But all right, fair enough. So this movie gets a recommend from me. Does it get a recommend from the both of you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I will say I would have volunteered this for the Golden Seal of Approval. But Nico, I'm going to take it from your score of 80 that this is not going to make it there for you.
It doesn't. No, not for me. I'm sorry. Like I get the appeal of it, but it's just not quite up at that zenith for me.
Dan, does it reach that zenith for you?
I think I would have done it. Yeah.
Okay.
Not quite as strong as some of the other Golden Seals, but I think it would have done it.
Well, no Golden Seal for us today. So, if you like this movie or don't like this movie or want to let us know how you feel about it, hit us up on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're also on Facebook. Don't open that door. Plus, you can check out all our episodes on our website. That's dotdhorror.com. But till then, stay on your grind set. You know what I mean? Sigmas only.
You can't. You can't.
Take care of one another. And as always, dear listener, don't open that door. Bye.